Okay, thank you, Jishin. Um, this is a very interesting chapter. So he starts off with a couple paragraphs from Dogen about how he was a young monk in China and very reverent and very serious young monk who wanted to clarify the great matter. And he really listened deeply to his teachers, and one of them told him, "What's the use of learning all this intellectual knowledge? How's that going to help people if we don't really clarify the great matter with our own experience of our..." My way of interpreting that is, unless we experience what our true self is, how do we clarify what enlightenment is or what the meaning of life is, throughout the chapter, 4 or 5 times he says, and the great matter is this, it's your true self. And then the great matter is a koan and different things, and it's the spirit of Shikan. So my first Dharma name was Hakuo, pure white hawk, because my last name is Hawkins, right? So Lou Nordstrom renamed me Shikan about 25 years ago or so. And I'm always reminded, when we get a Buddhist name, it's something we grow into, because I still have a lot of growing before I can really totally embody Shikan, the spirit of Shikan. And he said at the end of the chapter, he said, Shikan also means great intimacy. So there's all these different ways, and we try and interpret it and label it and define it and attain it or realize it. But we don't, the fact of the matter is we don't really know what it is. We know that we are, so we know that it is. And we gradually cultivate the faith in our own experience that it's what we are. Sometimes I just, one way of saying it, it's our living presence, So if we're going to clarify the great matter, we can't separate it from our living presence, because that's what we all are together every moment of our life, Every being that knows itself calls itself I. So what is this I? When we're a young kid, and we grow up and we're a teenager, and then we're an adult, and then we're middle-aged, and then we're old. We always call ourselves I. So this I that's always been with us is something that we can't really define. It changes all the time. The manifestations of it change all the time. But it's impermanent. And, as Maizumi says, we're born and die many, many times, faster than we can comprehend. So to clarify this great sea of impermanence, it's really difficult when we try to pinpoint it. But, our living presence is it. And once we realize that, it starts to become clear if we, follow Reb's advice, is realizing that as Buddhist practitioners, we're not a separate body mind, we're a conversation. So we talk about it together so we can realize that, the intimacy of our shared being is the great matter. And through conversation, we clarify it, not by grasping our thoughts or turning away from our thoughts, or grasping our experience or turning away from our experience, but by sharing in our conversation together. And we go deeper and deeper, looking deeper and deeper into the nature of our living presence. So, it's become clearer to me that what we are is not something solid or perceivable or describable. But if we're going to clarify what it is we are, even though it's not perceivable or describable, we can, open to that possibility that what could be more important than knowing and exploring the nature of that by which we know our experience, and not knowing in a purely intellectual way, but knowing in terms of, like being aware of, or witnessing or experiencing. So when he's in the chapter here, he's starting out to talk about what shikantaza is. So he says shikan means just or wholehearted. And I think of that as the heart of the whole, the spirit feeling heart of our whole being. And so we open up to that living presence, so we can say the nature of our being, it's present and it's alive. And it's so spacious, we can't find boundaries of it. We've all experienced the vastness of space and how there's no beginning or end. And how could it be that way and how could it not be that way? So that vast openness and that transparency of our experience into that openness, how everything arises and disappears into that vast openness, into that vast no-thingness. And even though it's impersonal in that it's pervades everywhere, each one of us is a unique expression of that. And also it's ungraspable, like Reb's teaching was bodhisattvas are always thinking. I feel like I'm always saying this, but in Maizumi's book, it seems relevant in every chapter when Reb quotes the Buddha as saying in one of his sutras, the Buddha said, bodhisattvas are always thinking how to save beings, all beings. But they don't grasp their thoughts. They offer them as gifts. And so their thinking doesn't disturb their deep tranquility. But it energizes us. We can support each other. And that was like a turning phrase for me. That's why I keep repeating it. So it's permission to go ahead and just let your thinking go wherever it wants to go, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's always here. It doesn't go anywhere, but there's just a continual arising and disappearing. Like Joko Beck calls thoughts impersonal energy fragments. So, and then the other quality of our true nature that really I'm always in the process of investigating is its imperturbability, the stability of it, and its unconditional welcoming presence. So sometimes when I'll do a prayer, I'll ask the Buddha to help me to feel more welcomed by your spirit. Or sometimes I'll do a prayer to Jesus, something like that, just whatever spontaneously arises. But when we feel welcomed, and we allow, and we follow the teaching, to train ourselves to unconditionally welcome whatever arises, then we begin to feel more welcomed, and then that reinforces our ability to welcome life unconditionally and make offerings, make all of our experience an offering to our true self and to the Sangha, to all beings. So then he goes a little farther down, he is talking about the first part of Shikan, stop the conscious mind from going on and on, means, let me read what he said exactly here. if you can stop the conscious mind from going on and on, then you can be aware of what is truly going on, what to do and how to do it. So again, to stop the conscious mind, it's sort of like what Reb says, bodhisattvas are thinking, but they don't grasp the thoughts. So it's like Hakuin saying, our thought being no thought, our singing and dancing are the voice of the Dharma. So if we just let thoughts go by and don't grasp them and don't be bothered by them, which we really don't have to do, if we look deeply enough into our experience of thinking, we don't have to be bothered by a thought. It's just those impersonal energy fragments. So just let them go by, and then our thought isn't, realize we don't know what it is, and then our thought is no thought, and that frees us up to do our singing and dancing. So that's what he means by stopping the conscious mind, because I'm sure if you've sat zazen for any period of time and you try to stop your thinking, good luck. You know, it's like trying to stop your heartbeat or trying to stop your breathing. You can stop your breathing, and you can temporarily kind of block off the experience of thinking for a little bit, but it's going to keep coming up. So anyway, I think, to make offerings and to revere, in all the different forms of practice, the great teachers that have taught the way, different ways we can clarify the great matter is what's really important, and how we share that. There's a couple poems that I haven't read for a long time from Ryokan. He was a hermit poet, if you don't know his name, from 18th century Japan, so he lived out in the mountains. And he really he's one of the most famous poets in the history of Japan, and also a great Zen master. So he dedicated his life to clarifying the great matter. And here's a couple of poems that I think are really meaningful. Walking along a narrow path at the foot of a mountain, I come to an ancient cemetery filled with countless tombstones and 1,000-year-old oaks and pines. The day is ending with a lonely, plaintive wind. The names on the tombs are completely faded, and even the relatives have forgotten who they were. Choked with tears, unable to speak, I take my staff and return home. And the other one I was going to read. First days of spring, blue sky, bright sun. Everything is gradually becoming fresh and green. Carrying my bowl, I walk slowly to the village. The children, surprised to see me, joyfully crowd about, bringing my begging trip to an end at the temple gate. I place my bowl on top of a white rock and hang my sack from the branch of a tree. Here we play with the wild grasses and throw a ball. For a time I play catch while the children sing, then it is my turn. Playing like this here and there, I have forgotten the time. Passers-by point and laugh at me, asking, "What is the reason for such foolishness?" No answer I give, only a deep bow. Even if I replied, they would not understand. Look around. There is nothing besides this. So what really moved me about these two poems is, Ryokan had such a flexibility or such a freedom to move from the depths of sadness to the joy and bliss of playing with children and the complete innocence and, power of that, being able to move freely throughout the whole range of human experience. And so, the singing and dancing of Hakuin is like the light and the play of Ryokan with the children, And that same light can shine on those gravestones with the names worn away. Think of the beings that were gone and will all be gone someday. some of us sooner than later. Maybe that's liberation, and so maybe that can be liberation. Open to that possibility, that it's sad and we'll be missed and we'll miss our loved ones and our Sangha. But open to the possibility that we'll always be back and we'll always return in some form. So I've been going on a while. Why don't we have hear what you guys think about resolving or clarifying the great matter.
Thank you, Shiken. This was a beautiful chapter, but I love the way you helped us expand our understanding of it by the phrase "welcome everything," which I think our dedicated and consistent sitting practice kind of builds us up to do, whether we want it or not. But instead of, reacting one way or another in a very dramatic way when something unusual happens, we can be more curious about it and just allow it to be and see what will happen. So welcoming everything, and the poems. I love the poems that you read, contrasting the real fact that someday we'll just be under a tombstone if we're lucky, and yet meanwhile the human beings go on dancing and singing and doing the things that humans do. We hope that they will go on, but we don't know. This month was the anniversary of my father's death, and it's been many, many years since he passed away. And someone had photographed the tombstone where both he and my mother were buried. And I was surprised and dismayed at how his presence has receded from my active memory. And it's only on the anniversaries of birthdays or deaths that I really think and try to remember how it was. And hopefully someday there will be someone saying, "Oh yeah, I remember that person, Jane," But this was a really wonderful reminder in this chapter of just being, and in the great matter of our lives, in my view, it is to not only clarify it and welcome the things that happen, but set our intention to be able to respond to the events of our lives in a way that's helpful and nourishing to other people.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. One other thing I was going to add about the cemetery poem, it really felt to me like his willingness and freedom to fully enter the grief of death, is like the transforming factor that allows the freedom to sing and dance and just kind of let go. Like somehow the light shines stronger. It's hard to put into words, but somehow the light of our true being shines stronger when we're willing to fully embrace, the the power of our grief, of our longing for it, you know. So making offerings to the Buddhas from the depth of our souls, like Mitch is loving Rumi's Love Dogs poem. Yeah. Yeah. I was in another group the other day, and one person said that, well, my uncle had this interesting thing he put on his grave, on his tombstone. It says, "I never thought this would happen to me." I thought that was great. A good reminder, right? Yeah.
And thank you for your talk. I was happy that you said clarifying the great matter, because I think it's such an ongoing process. I don't think I'll ever get to clarify it, but clarifying it is really part, for me, part of practice, and it changes every moment.
Yeah.
I feel I'm qualifying the great matter when I follow the advice that I hear every time I'm here. Don't squander your life. The degree to which I'm not squandering my life is the degree to which I'm clarifying the great matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Shikan, thank you. The cemetery poem, for some reason, made me think of a song. In the late 70s, early 80s, there was this supergroup, this outlaw country supergroup called the Highwaymen. It was Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and Waylon Jennings. And one of their hit songs was The Highwaymen. It was a self-titled hit song. But in the song, it talks about 4 different highwaymen, how they lived their lives, and then how they died. And it was like one guy was like a criminal, one guy's an astronaut, one guy's a railroad worker or something. But the point is that it talks again about how these 4 individuals live and die, but the essence of what makes a highwayman, that never goes away. And it always keeps coming back, and the song keeps talking about highwaymen will always come back. They always come back. So highwaymen live, but they never really die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Think of that. So I guess what I'm saying is that I didn't know Johnny Cash was a Zen master. That's very cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, one time I asked Reb, what does he think about what happens after we die? And he said, well, whether there's rebirth or not, it seems pretty clear that the momentum of the practice continues. So the essence of the highwayman, continues. Something to, and then I remember I was talking to a friend, I think it was Gary actually. We were talking briefly about death, and I think Gary said, well, we'll find out. And that what came to me was, yeah, but I don't think we're going to find out the way we think we're going to find out. So that's another thing to think about. What would that be like? We might find out something totally different than what we think we're going to find out.
Thank you so much for your talk. So it's Valentine's Day, but it's also Ash Wednesday, and I went to church today and I got my ashes, and I don't like Valentine's Day, but I like Ash Wednesday a lot, and I like it for the same reason that I really love that cemetery poem. Like I like to think about not squandering my life, and where I may end up eventually, like not in a morbid way, but I was thinking about that, you know, when my pastor was putting the ashes on and he says, you know, from dust you came and to dust you shall return. And as he was doing it, I was wondering, you know, who all the lives were that were in the ashes that were being put on my forehead, and if I'll ever get to be that for somebody else someday, and how beautiful that was. So that's just where my head was. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for clarifying the great matter of stopping your thoughts, as he brought out that, and yeah, I concur with you. Good luck for a couple of minutes, but the fact of a gentle letting go and what's the word? Being generous with your thoughts, and you know, just that gentleness of it, and you know, allowing it to move on and not being attached in that attachment thing. And that is that's definitely something that I'm working on a lot. But thank you again for clarifying that.
Yeah, there's another teacher who said, I don't recall the name right now, he said that not being attached to thoughts in our normal waking state is the greatest devotion. So I think that's when we're not attached to our thinking, it frees up our feeling, our seeing, our hearing, and we're receiving the energy of the Buddha instead of being preoccupied by our small self, our own concerns. Yeah.
I think we are coming to the end of our time together. Would anyone else like to offer some insight that they received from the study this evening? Any announcements?